You have a child who, after a couple of weeks of school being back, is saying, don't want to do it anymore. I don't like it. I've got no friends. I hate school. No one's nice to me. It doesn't make sense. I want to stay home. School anxiety, school refusal, or emotion-based school avoidance. So many families are struggling with it. The numbers are rising as they have been for the last couple of years. Today on the Happy Families podcast, what to do when your child doesn't want to go to school. Hello and welcome. We're so glad to have you along to the Happy Families podcast, real parenting solutions every day on Australia's most downloaded parenting podcast. We are Justin and Kylie Coulson, and every Tuesday on the pod, we answer your tricky questions. They don't come much trickier than this one. If you'd like to submit a tricky question, we've got a super simple system at happyfamilies.com.au. Just scroll down to podcasts, click the record button and start talking. A couple of people recently have said that they haven't had success with that. You can send us a voice memo. All you do is open up the voice record app on your phone, talk to that, and then send it to podcasts with an S, podcasts at happyfamilies.com.au. Kylie, here's today's message.
I'm using AI as I'd like to remain anonymous and not have my voice on the podcast. Our 11 years old is so anxious about going to school as she has no friends. She's cried so many times the last 2 weeks over having to attend school and is flat out refusing to go. She doesn't do any extracurricular activities, hates sports. We've tried multiple things, and she doesn't last past a few lessons if she doesn't find someone she meshes with or if she doesn't like the coach or teacher. We also don't have the spare funds at the moment even if she wanted to do anything. We aren't religious, so any sort of youth group is out too. Her social anxiety is through the roof. She refuses to do any new activities, so this makes it hard to introduce her to new things. I'm just at such a loss as to how to help her short of intensive therapy, which again, we can't afford. Any way in which I feel we can help her involves spending stupid amounts of money. How do you get your child help when funds are minimal or none?
This is so tricky for parents across the country, across the world. We struggle seeing our kids challenged.
Yeah,
we struggle seeing them in a hard place.
It's so hard.
And the friendship challenges that our children experience especially tug at the heartstrings, because I think all of us at some point in our lives have experienced that feeling of loneliness, that feeling of being isolated or excluded. And we don't want our kids to experience that.
Data shows that loneliness is increasing, and you know who's most affected by it? Our youngest people. Like, it's the most hyper-connected time in the history of the world, and yet so many kids are feeling so lonely. We've been there. We've experienced the whole school refusal, school avoidance. Emotion-based school avoidance is the technical term for it. It's so hard. There's another element to this in addition to the heartbreak, and that is having a lack of resources and thinking, if we had some more money, maybe we could try this, maybe we could take them there, maybe we could have this assessment done, maybe we could, and because of the cost of living challenges that so many people, well, almost everybody's struggling with right now, it just adds another layer of complexity and a layer of feeling helpless, feeling like you're out of control. So for our anonymous listener who has sent this through, we feel your pain. We have some suggestions and some ideas that could be helpful. Kylie, I've got a couple of things. I know you've got a couple of things. Why don't you kick it off first, and then I'll add some ideas around that.
I think the harsh reality for all of us, whether we are 11, 22, or in our 50s, friends don't usually land in our lap.
No.
They actually require a whole heap of intention and time.
Yeah. And we should highlight here, we don't know what has happened in this family. Like, there might be a lot of time, effort and intention going into building friendships and it's just not working. We don't know, but they do take work. You can't just have a friendship land in your lap.
And research which support that it takes more than 200 hours of intentional time. It's not we're hanging out in class together or we're in a group with, 15 other kids. It's 200 hours of personal interaction with somebody before you would consider them a close friend.
I feel like you've taken my job as the doctor. You're talking about the science. The research that you're referring to is something that you and I have talked about a number of times because adult friendships are tricky as well. And there's a university professor at the University of Kansas. His name's Jeffrey Hall, and he published a report a couple of years ago now that showed that it takes roughly 50 hours of time together to move from being a mere acquaintance to a casual friend. 50 hours to say, oh yeah, we're friends. But it takes to go from that basic friend status to being a genuine close friend, like you said, 200 hours. And that's not 200 hours of sitting next to someone in class. That's 200 hours of intentional activity and side-by-side time face-to-face, side-by-side. You're going camping or you're spending time on the weekend having a picnic or playing in the park or whatever. Like it's genuine time together, building your relationship, not just being near each other.
So when you look at the friendships that are flourishing in the school playground, I would suggest 9 times out of 10, those friendships exist outside of the playground as well.
Yeah.
They've been fostered by families who are coming together on the weekends after school for play dates, and they're actually spending intentional time together outside of the flurry and activity of the school classroom and playground. So I know that it sounds like this all lands in mum's lap. It kind of does. That's the sucky thing about this. It actually does.
Especially if you've got a child who's really struggling to make it work. Without that parental intervention, it's just too hard. You've got to get kids into your backyard or into your living room or at the park down the street with some parents supervising and being around while the kids play.
But the amazing part of this acknowledgement is it doesn't cost a cent. It doesn't cost a cent to be intentional about making opportunities for your children to have experiences with other kids.
Okay, let's get really concrete about it. What specific things can parents do in that situation? You've done this a lot more than me. What have you done?
So I would suggest that your child has a handful of kids that they would love to be friends with. They usually do.
And they may have some level of acquaintance.
But if they can't give you any clarity, talking to the classroom teacher about the children that she spends time with in the classroom or the children that they feel she's more suited towards. Because sometimes we're inclined to want to go to the popular kids because they're larger than life and that's where we see the party at. But the reality is they're not our people. We don't fit into that space. But there are other kids over here that we've missed because there's so much flurry over here.
I want to put an exclamation mark on what you've just said there. We do need to get to the break, but this is so important. Having watched our 6 daughters go through various iterations of school over the last 20 years or thereabouts, there are so many kids who sit in class and who are, at a practical level, they're almost invisible because they're not the popular kids and they're also not the unpopular kids. They're just kids who are in class who people almost don't notice. They're everywhere. There are so many of them. This little girl may be one of those kids. Finding another 1 or 2 kids like that could be the answer because they don't need heaps of friends.
No.
Just one.
And so once you've got an idea of the children that your child would be best suited with, then the next step is reaching out to the parents. So it may be just as easy as sending a little note off to the teacher with some invites for a couple of friends and inviting them over for afternoon tea.
Or do what we've done and say, here's our email address, here's our phone number. Can you just give this out to all the parents? Because there's obviously privacy laws and we can't ask for theirs. And you literally just include a note and say, I've got a girl in the class who really would like to be friends with your kids. We thought we might do a little play date. Would you be up for it? If your child would be happy to do it, can we please play?
And one of the other things that I really love doing, especially in the holidays, creating a little craft day or something. The kids really enjoyed having a handful of friends over and doing some kind of structured activity because for new kids coming together, they actually need some structure around their friendship.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be the whole time, but if they get together and do an hour of craft and then they have another hour of playtime, it ticks every box.
So we've done lots of different things over the years. We've had little cooking classes where the kids have been able to bake some cookies and then decorate them once they've cooled down, which gives them time in between to have some play date. We've done painting days. We've just had a pool, hang out, and they've played a whole heap of games in the pool. And we've also done Easter days or, things like that where you can actually kind of theme it and
tie
have
it to a
fun.
calendar, calendar date or something like that. After the break, a handful of other ideas that might work if those things aren't quite resonating for you on the Happy Families podcast. Okay, Kylie, my response to this is a little bit different to yours. You've taken the approach, let's see if we can build friendships. Maybe we've tried before, but if we go with these angles, we might be able to get some kids over or spend some time at the local park, but we can get the kids face to face, side by side, doing activities, building the relationship. Maybe something could work. My approach is slightly different. The first thing that I'm going to suggest is to the degree that you can, recognizing that funds are limited, I think that it's worth going and getting things checked out medically. When a child is struggling that much, it's worth just checking, is there anything going on with neurodivergent challenges? Is there anything happening from a psychological point of view that we're not aware of? Getting in to see the GP and just exploring that initially can give you some direction. The second thing that I want to emphasize is just how important this thing called school belonging is and working with the school on it. What do I mean by this? Well, there are two relationships that really matter at school. The first one, and I've talked about this on the podcast quite a lot as school has commenced this year, but I'm going to emphasize it again real quick. The first one is there one kid at school who, when your child enters the school gates, sees them and says, hey, come sit with us. That's what it means to belong. And working with the teacher with that specific goal in mind, or the school guidance counselor or the school chaplain, whatever that welfare person is, that well-being person is in the school, working with them to identify one child who is open to taking on the responsibility and finding the joy in seeing your child and saying, hey, come sit with us. Children who have that are happy to be at school. They look forward to being at school because they know that they're being noticed. They know that they belong. But they also need one other thing in terms of relationship, and that is an adult who notices them, who calls them by name, and who is able to have a quick chat with them about something that's going on in their life. It might be something in the classroom. It could be the cross country the other day. How'd you go? It might be, hey, I heard that this thing's happening and I know you're interested in it. Are you going to try out for it? Doesn't really matter. So long as there's an adult, usually the school teacher, who says, hey, Kylie, it's so good to see you. Hey, what happened the other day with that audition you were trying out for? Or how did you go the other day at the swimming carnival? I know that was something that you were really, really hoping to do well in. I didn't get to see your races. That interaction with an adult combined with a child who says, hey, come sit with us, what a difference that makes. So I'd be working with the school directly and asking, what can we do to support my child to build these two relationships? The last thing I'm going to mention is the importance of third spaces. So you've got home, you've got school, and this is where that whole question of money comes in. We've tried extracurricular activities, but she won't do them. And we've tried extracurricular activities. I can't even say the word anymore, but we don't have any money anymore. In our experience, our children, when they do extracurricular activities, they don't tend to say, oh, I've got friends and I want to spend more, like 200 hours with them. They just do that activity, and that's often all there is. So finding a third space, which is usually going to be the neighborhood or maybe the park down the road, or if you live near the beach, it could be that. Finding a place where the kids can hang out with other kids and enjoy each other, the third space is so valuable.
You mentioned a couple of weeks ago about a guy that you had been listening to in your feed who suggested that when his kids came home from school, he wasn't concerned about whether or not they spent time with other peers. He actually wanted to foster relationships with other adults, people that they could glean from and learn from. They could have mature conversations with.
Mentors and models.
Yeah. And so in this situation, maybe there's a grandparent, maybe there's an auntie, that maybe there's a friend down the road who has a little bit of extra time on their hands that they could spend with your daughter as well. I know that sometimes that seems a little bit left field, but for me growing up, the people that I loved spending time with most were the people who lit up when they saw me walk into the room.
I want to jump in on this. No, I want to jump in on this.
It wasn't my peers.
Because you had some friends, but not heaps of friends. But you used to spend a whole lot of time with Donna, who lived 2 doors down. And you used to spend a whole lot of time with Jill, who was the mum of one of your friends. And they were really your best friends, right? That's who you looked forward to hanging out with after school.
100%.
And
because like I said, they lit up. When our kids were a little bit younger, they had a piano teacher, Carol. And as soon as she walked into the room, no matter what we were doing, her whole face, her whole face shone into my house. And she just elevated us because we felt like we were literally the most important people in her world in that moment.
There's a lot of content, a lot of answers that we've given here, building friendships, bringing adults in as friends, creating spaces, third spaces for kids to develop those relationships, checking out additional needs, looking at school belonging. And the one that we haven't mentioned is just more time with family. So valuable because that's the relationship that matters more than any other. It is a tricky question. We definitely can't be comprehensive in the time that we've got, and we will have to wrap it up there because we've gone well over time. But we hope that that's been a useful suggestion for people who are struggling with school refusal around relationship issues. If you'd like to submit a tricky question, please send us a voice memo to podcasts@happyfamilies.com.au or visit us at happyfamilies.com.au to submit your questions there. The Happy Families podcast is produced by Justin Rulon from Bridge Media. More information and more resources are available at happyfamilies.com.au.